My favorite movie of all time, hands down, is Forrest Gump. I love that movie for so many reasons, but one of the primary reasons I love it so much is because of the love story at the center of it, the love story of Forrest for Jenny. Jenny is Forrest's childhood friend, his neighbor, who is the only person that really treats him well. None of the other kids treat Forrest well at all. They all make fun of him, but Jenny treats him well. And right from the start, Forrest has a crush on her. She's his childhood sweetheart, even though she only thinks of him as a friend. As the both of them grow up and go their separate ways, Forrest ends up in Vietnam. And in the jungles of Vietnam, all he can think about is being shot at. All he can think about is Jenny. Every single day, he spends a couple hours each day writing these letters, handwritten letters to her, pouring his heart out, telling her all the things that are happening to him, all the things that are going on. After several months go by, some of the guys in his unit start giving Forrest a hard time because they notice that for all the letters that Forrest has written Jenny, she hasn't written him back one single time. Forrest stands up and defends her honor, and says she will write back. I know she'll write back when she has the time. Oh, Jenny has the time, all right. She just doesn't give Forrest a second thought. Right after he says that, the movie cuts and you see Jenny getting on one of those VW buses, the mini buses, those old mini buses, to head out to the West Coast, to San Francisco. She's one of the love children, the flower children. She's going to be part of that hippie movement. She has plenty of time on her hands. She just doesn't give Forrest a second thought. As the movie progresses, a little while later, Forrest's unit in Vietnam is ambushed, and Forrest, in this incredibly heroic action, a repeated action, goes in, keeps going back in to get the members of his unit out. He saves basically all the members of his unit from sure death. He's wounded very seriously himself, but after he recovers and gets back to the States, he's awarded the Medal of Honor. So he goes to the White House to receive the Medal of Honor. The president pins it on his uniform. And after the ceremony, he begins wandering around Washington, D.C. If you've seen the movie, you notice that you'll know that Forrest tends to wander around places and happen upon these incredible events, incredible circumstances. Things happen to him, unusual, incredible, extraordinary things. So while he's walking through D.C., he happens upon an anti-war protest. The crowds start pushing and shoving, and somehow he ends up right near the stage. It's at the Lincoln Memorial, the podium where Martin Luther King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. He ends up near the podium, and some of the organizers of the protest look at him and they see this guy dressed up in a uniform, this vet, and they think he must be a disgruntled vet. So they bring him up to the podium and ask him to speak. Forrest has no idea what to say, and as he's standing in front of the podium looking out at these throngs of people, thousands and thousands of people gathered on the Washington Mall to hear what he has to say, he hears this one voice. As the people are murmuring, he hears this one voice that stands out. It's Jenny. She's calling out to him from the crowds, deep within the crowds. Immediately, he jumps from the podium and runs down, pushes through the crowds, and embraces her. And the rest of that afternoon, they walk around the city, catching up, rekindling their friendship. Forrest says, "It was the happiest moment of my life." Until Jenny introduces him to Wes, her boyfriend. Forrest had always wanted to be her boyfriend, and in that moment he thought that things were going really well and he might have a chance to be her boyfriend. So his heart is crushed, heartbroken when he meets Wes, but he's very gracious to him until a little while later when he watches Wes haul off and hit Jenny. And then Forrest, this very mild-mannered, peaceable guy, becomes enraged, infuriated, and he nearly beats Wes to a bloody pulp. If it weren't for Jenny pulling Forrest off of him, he probably would have, for what he did to Jenny. But Jenny, instead of being angry at Wes and leaving him, is ticked off at Forrest. Ticked off at Forrest for interfering in their relationship, and she tells Forrest to leave. Forrest, before he does, takes the Medal of Honor off his chest and hands it to her and says, "Here, I want you to have this." As the movie progresses, years go by and all these incredible circumstances happen to Forrest. Eventually he becomes a millionaire through these odd circumstances with Bubba Gump Shrimp, if you've seen the movie, where he and a former vet start this business that becomes enormously successful. He becomes a millionaire, and all these other incredible things happen to him over the course of those years. But Forrest says that every single day, all he could think about in the midst of all these incredible things was Jenny. And that the one thing that he was hoping, and from the bottom of his heart, genuinely, sincerely, even if he wasn't part of her life, he says, I just hope that she is happy. At that moment when he says that, the movie again cuts, and you see Jenny doing lines of coke, strung out on drugs. She's become an addict. She's hit rock bottom. Eventually she gets into rehab, and when she's done with rehab, she has no place to go. So she goes and finds Forrest and shows up at his door one day. And without any judgment, instantaneously, immediately, Forrest brings her in, invites her into his home, and says he'll take care of her. He'll nurse her back to health, which he does. Even though she sleeps all day, she's still recovering from all the effects that the drugs have had, all the way that they've racked her body. She sleeps for the most part all day. Forrest says, it was the happiest moment of my life. Things seem to be going well, at least in Forrest's mind, with their relationship, their friendship. They're rekindling their friendship again in some deeper ways. And so Forrest finally works up the courage to ask Jenny to marry him. She freaks out, though. And the night after he asks her, she packs all her stuff up in the middle of the night. And early in the morning, before Forrest gets up, she leaves. She, without telling him, she just runs away. And he doesn't see her for years on end. Again, Forrest says all he can think about, though, is Jenny. Even though Forrest has more and more of these incredible, amazing, astounding, extraordinary experiences, all he can think about is Jenny. Jenny doesn't give him a second thought. She continues to live her life until one day Forrest gets a phone call from her. She invites him down to where she's living. She says that she has some big news for him. And one of the pieces, the biggest pieces of news she has for him, is that she's very sick. This part of the movie takes place in the early 80s, before anybody knew what this disease was, but it turns out that it's AIDS and that she's dying from it. Without her asking to come and live with Forrest, Forrest insists that she come home with him, that he will take care of her, that he will nurse her even through her death. So she comes home with him, and as she gets sicker and sicker and gets closer and closer to death, one day she turns to Forrest and she asks him to marry her. And their wedding day, Forrest says, it was the happiest moment of my life. Every time I watch that movie, I get so ticked off at Jenny. How could she treat Forrest this way? How could she take advantage of him in this way? How could she not give him a second thought and keep only turning to him when she needs something? That's the only time she would turn to him, was when she needs something. I get so angry at Jenny until I realize that I do the same thing. I'm Jenny. We all are Jenny. When it comes to God, we barely give God a second thought. Unless we need something from God, we barely give God a second thought. And then I look at Forrest and I think, why doesn't he just cut his losses? Why doesn't he just move on and find somebody else who will love him, who will treat him the right way? And I realize that Forrest can't do that. He is so madly in love with Jenny that he will never give up on her, in the hopes that one day she will love him the same way. And miracle of miracles, that's exactly what happens. And then I realize that's how God looks at us, even though we don't give him a second thought. He's so madly in love with us that he will never give up on us, in the hopes that one day we will turn back to him and love him with all our heart, the way he loves us. See, this is what Christianity is really all about. It's a love story, the greatest love story ever, the love story of God for his people, for us. Christianity isn't about rules or rituals. It's about falling in love with God, falling in love with a God who's so madly in love with us that He will love us even though we don't give him a second thought. He will never give up on us. He loves us so much. He's so madly in love with us that he will become human, take on human flesh, and on a little hill outside of Jerusalem, give his life in order to win us back. This is what Christianity is really all about. It's a love story, the greatest love story ever told. So, what have you been taught Christianity is all about? What are your impressions of Christianity? What do you think it's all about? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can go to the Contact EJ page of the Raising Jesus website and leave them there. I look forward to hearing from you.